Ma van nacht o crí dat hírs dat léite a chammarí giving o. Is dat vainter huirk dúl dói féle a chammarí giving o. Dar hanjalas de chailte krevach de glaunta malas de vanta lere o gram o crí iad súd le chéile a cham.
If you looked down the street, you had sea and the mountains as well. But I thought that was the greatest view that I really saw at the time in my life.
Well, it was Market Square first of all, and then it became Devonshire Square. And of course, Devonshire Square became Grattan Square. I think when a lot of people walk through Dungarvan, they just walk through shops and houses. For me, I suppose I'm walking through history. I'm walking on the causeway where my granduncle laboured across it when he was drunk.
When I was growing up, every house nearly had a family in it. But today there's not even half a dozen, like in the whole square.
There was 8 of us, but never really all at the same time. It was when you're the youngest, the eldest ones have gone off to wherever they're going to be, teacher training school or wherever they're gone off to. And then so there was still the boys, 3 boys in an eternally smelly room at the back of the house overlooking the Cummer Mountains.
Like everybody else, all our mothers and fathers wanted was the best for us. And once there's a fire in the grate and food on the table.
Like when I was growing up, I knew everybody in the town. I knew all the children, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, the mothers and the fathers. But today it's kind of all changed. You don't know anyone like today.
We never had luxuries, but we were never hungry or we were never cold. Or
all the people that grew up with me, there's no competition. Even though there was the rich children, the guards' children we thought were very rich, and then there was managers' children.
Like at that time, everybody watched out for everybody. You know what I mean? It was a great thing, really. Or if they could help out in any way, if they're doing a job in the house or something like that, they'd help out.
Say sometimes I was born the wrong time, but looking back in it, Elsie will tell you they were happy times. They never went to bed without saying the Rosa. No matter, they worked from dawn until dark.
All I can remember when I was young, my parents were always working. When my mum used to come in, she was always washing, ironing, baking.
But Dungarvan wasn't as built up, of course, and it was very easy to access the country. There was a place called the Mills out 2 miles outside town. I mean, there was always every day we were kind of going, where will we go? What will we do? Will we cross that stream?
Played in lots of skipping and teak, blind man's buff and all that.
Across the road from here now with a physical culture club, weightlifting club, and I was in that too and did a lot. We used to go up and climb the Cummers and right up to the very top and over back into Ballymacarbery. We did all these sort of things with nothing else.
I've been fishing since I was a child. My older sister Mary and myself used to go down the Mahon River when we were very, very young, bring down a sandwich, and my mother used to make homemade lemonade. And we'd have that with us down all day. And you're safe then.
As soon as I got a bicycle, then I was cycling out to Colligan in particular, and I had a friend out there who actually worked in the bakery, so I'd call into her house and have a cup of tea and a bit of apple tart, and then go on up the woods and up to the Salmon Lep in particular, which was just a really wild place. Like
the lighting used to go off at 12 o'clock in the night, so after 12 o'clock you'd see nothing. So the whole town the lights used to go off at 12 o'clock. So you'd hear people outside and they'd be singing away and talking, all right, but you wouldn't see them.
My sister Walburga is sitting on top of Jimmy Foley's Donkey and Trap, and that then is tied to the old lamppost that was across the way, and it was one of the few electric lights that was around the town. That one there, and that was always kept lighting.
I remember coming in with my mother, we'll say, down the lookout there, which is looking across onto the Coniger. There used to be a swimming pool down there.
I was in the swimming club in Dungarvan. It was 2 shillings to join. I had to do jobs for my mother to get the 2 shillings.
It was an open-air tidal pool, and that was magic, and that existed for many years. It was built before I was born, and it continued up into the 80s, I think the early 80s.
That when high tide was coming in, they'd open up the sluice gates, all the water would come in, they'd close the sluice gates before the tide would turn, and the pool was kept full of water, and they'd empty the pool every so often and give it a wash out and that.
But that was a great place, and all of the children in the town learned to swim.
I was a great swimmer, like a stone. Like a stone, you know. Oh, you used to have swimming galas. And
that's where the lads would spend their days down there swimming. I tried to learn to swim there, but I just couldn't. I used to hate the place because, how will I put it, the sewerage system in town was inside in the quay, and nothing was taken out of the bay. So everything remained inside in the bay, and you could get anything floating around inside the pool. It was a little bit disgusting.
It was a big thing, you know, at that time to be able to go for a swim in a swimming pool. And, you know, I remember that distinctly. And we used to go across in on a boat from the lookout across to the Coniger.
But we go over to Coniger for a couple of pence. They'd row you over, spend the day over there with a couple of sandwiches and a bottle of lemonade, and come back again.
The smells in the town, the leather factory was in operation when I was a child.
We used to cycle around here, but really kind of avoid it. I remember coming down this lane, there used to be hides either side of the lane, and then dripping, I don't know what to call it other than juice.
To see the hides, and sometimes see them dripping with water. I think it was water anyway.
We called it juice, and it stank. And we used to really accelerate going down this lane, down to the lookout, into the fresh air of the lookout.
And at 8 o'clock in the morning and at 6 o'clock at night time, the hooter went, and woo! And, that was great because the whole town knew the time without looking at their watches or clocks.
All down beyond the castle, right over as far as the lookout, even where the Tannery restaurant is now, there was sprawling old buildings, some very, very old buildings, but as all you met was forklifts going from one side of the road to the other carrying, and all the men had old clothes and big heavy aprons.
But there was another place we used to go down to in the quay. It was a cotton store. They used to hold the big bales of cotton down there. When the farmers would shear the sheep, they used to put them into big bales and bring it down, and they'd sell it down there to the cotton store. And we used to be in there playing tig, or hide and seek. And when you jump on the bale of hay, you go about 4 foot into the air onto the next one. So it was great fun to be down there. That was a great place to hang out as kids as well, you know. But the men used to let you in there because they knew that you couldn't get hurt with the wool.
We used to play squash in the courtyard of King John's Castle. Since then, the concrete has been taken from the wall and it's been brought back to its natural state of stone. But in those days, it was concreted, plastered.
There was another place then down Scanlon's Yard. There was a great place to hang out as well. There was coffin sheds and everything down there.
It was all wild and overgrown, and we used to go in there getting sticky backs and firing them at each other and just be lost in there for days.
But that was a great place to hang out and drink cider, you know. So we used to dig dugouts down there. We dig down about 8 feet and put a roof on it. And we put the sods back up on top, it'd be waterproof. And we go down there then in the daytime or the night time, we'd read comics, and we had a little stove in there.
We used to go and play hurling and football in the square. Every chance we got, Sundays we'd have a match over in the square. No traffic, no nothing coming. Maybe the odd one, I think the local PP had a converted car with charcoal.
We used to play street leagues. Like we were playing on the streets, under the light even. You know what I mean? Pitch and toss. Pitching the 8 metres up to the bob and all like that. The guards come after you then, run like hell.
One we used to as kids enjoy going into was Dan Fryer. He did footballs and all that, so we had a puncture and the ball needed to be pumped. We go into Dan and Dan had pumped, but he wouldn't charge us for it, you know. So we got to know Dan, which is now where the wine buff is.
In Dublin, you had Clary's Clock, right? Okay, but in Dungarvan, we had Dan Fraher's Corner. And you'd meet her there and you'd be peeping to see was she there, or she'd be peeping to see were you there to go to the pictures or go to a dance or something like that.
My first film I ever went to, I think it was a film called Captains Courageous in the old cinema. Now, not the old cinema now, the one before that on the bridge. As you're going in, Bridge Motors was there.
You had to do go picking periwinkles, then you didn't get the price of the pictures, you earned it, like. You know, it's like respect, you don't get respect, you earn respect, like.
See, most now at weekends, there'd be a queue for downstairs now. The left-hand side of the door, from the door, right up to the beaches, as one. Sure, there's all houses up there now, nearly up to the brewery. And on the right-hand side, there'd be another queue for the balcony, way down past Molly Creeley's and that.
Oh, I love the romantic ones. Robert Mitchum and...
Yeah, there's all westerns at that time. Do you know what I mean? If there's a western on, you go every night to see the same western if you had the money.
And every Sunday, you go to the matinee. And you just have a serial, maybe for about 15, 20 minutes. And we just get really excited. Maybe a Roy Rogers or Apollon Cassidy. And to just get to the exciting stage and bang, stopped. You just have to go back the next week to see.
And then you get burned. You know, if you put your arms around the girl, you were gone, burned.
And there was a film star called Raymond Navarra, supposed to be a very handsome man. And this woman in the audience, "Oh, Raymond Navarra, I love you so much." And she had to be put out of the cinema over shouting up at Raymond Navarra.
But there was one character, actually he's still alive. He came in one night and I said, "Look, I'm terrible." He had a bag of chips and you knew by him he was enjoying them. I said, "I'm terrible sorry." I said, "You cannot bring in chips." "Ah, gosh," he said. "No, sorry." I said, "No, you'll have to eat them." So he went outside. And I tell you now, he wasn't outside 30 seconds and he was in again. "Now, Rita," he says. I said, "There's still a wicked smell of chips."
Then there was another fella called Johnny and Jackie. He went to the pictures one night and he came out and he told all his friends, "Geez," he said, "it was a good job." He said, "There was that we moved out of the way." He said, "There was a train coming along and only for a turn we were all killed stone dead."
But he told the story the next day. He went outside, put the bag of chips up in his head and put on his cap.
You had the cinema, but you'd have every Sunday night there used to be a dance in the town hall.
"Oh my God," he said. Here I'm telling it. "I was nearly blind going in," he said. "There was blooming grease running down," he said, "my eyes."
Oh God, I loved it. I loved dancing. And I used to do a lot of Cayley dancing and a lot of Irish dancing.
Oh, that was the place to go then, the hops. And everybody met everybody at the hop. That's where all the romance started from.
Going to the dances then, you only hope for the best. Hope the fellas would have to go out. There'd be the fellas would be at one side and the girls would be at the other, and you'd see them coming across and you'd be hoping to you they were going to ask.
Every Sunday night in summertime. And we get a drive. Yeah. If you had a fella that had a bike, in the bar of the bike, he'd bring you in the bar of the bike from about 7 or 8 miles.
There was Cayley's in Ballon Road, and we went to all of them, and even we could get to.
There was one man in the town hall, he used to use a ruler, and you couldn't go any nearer than 12 inches to your partner.
Reading drills and mangles. To earn sixpence to learn step dancing. Yeah, from Margarita, and her son is alive here in Dungarvan today.
The first job you'd get is going out to the farmers, tinning. You'd be tinning turnip and mangles. And that was a tough job because you were down on your knees doing that, and you had bags on your knees. And there'd be thistles and everything on the drills that time because there was no talk of spray or anything then, like. And so there was thistles and you could meet anything when you were tinning.
When you're at school holidays, you'd get messenger by here, and I was doing messenger over in the council offices, and I did messenger in the creamery here.
My first job was in a shoe shop down the main street, and the name of the shop was Eddie Beresford. The bargain house for small profits. That's what he had up on the door, yeah.
At the same time, it was a tough life, and I can remember my mother you know, she had to bake bread to sell, you know, she had to make brown bread so that she could supplement the wages and that kind of thing.
Well, I tell you how much he used to pay me. 5 shillings a week, and that was a lot of money then. But I used to make that 5 shillings before I go to work snaring rabbits.
I had a rifle, I bought a rifle, and I knew if I had a rifle I could make a good bit of money. So my uncle gave me the money and I bought the rifle, and I go shooting in the morning at 5 o'clock all through the winter. I cycle up to Old Parish without a breakfast now.
We used to pick blackberries, and my brother used to kill rabbits, and we used to bring them over to Tommy Hallinan's in them days, and he used to buy them.
You know, there was always a bit of money to come in. It might be only a shilling for a rabbit or something, but you could sell the blackberries as well. Blackberries were a big seller in them days as well.
I had to go over to town, load up a horse and cart at 9 years of age, and deliver all the milk to Abbeyside before I went into school.
We'd have all of little jobs to do, chores.
Yeah, and over the mat then I used to store the soup in a big pot. There used to be a big, huge pot of soup, and we'd have to keep stirring it to stop it from sticking to the end of the sauce. And we used to make sandwiches and tea.
And the walk out to the Man Falls, fantastic. I used to cut turf up there with my dad.
I was walking down Muddy Biles, or Muggy Biles, is a paper shop, delivering papers.
In school at 14 years when I'm working at 14 and a half. And I worked in this house for 5 years.
I used to go down to the leather factory then with the Dungarvan leader, and I'd sit in. Dungarvan leader, read all about it, men drowned in the hay barn, and I'd sell more then.
You worked hard, you worked from 7:30 in the morning till 7:30 at night.
What did you do? What was the work?
I done housework there.
Okay.
I done housework, you know, working it down. And you done the washing, there was no washing machine, you had the tub and the washing board, and just done the washing like that there, you know.
I remember Mam actually knit a beautiful red fold-over pullover, red like my own one now, right, okay, and a lovely white shirt and short pants. And down I went anyhow to school for my very first day.
I done the ironing, and for the lovely satin blouse belonged to the person in the house, and didn't iron burn it. And I said, what in the name of God am I going to do like that? I didn't sleep for the night, but in the morning anyway I said, do you know, I'll throw it out the back. And I said, I'll throw it in there until you get all dirty and everything, and they'll think it fell off the line, you know, like that. But by God, then the missus happened to be out, and there she found the blouse, and the print of the iron in it.
I decided after an hour I had enough and I made a run, I did. And I ran up the road, and there was a deluge of rain, there was a thunderstorm, and I came up home. Now we only lived about 300 yards up the road, but the shirt was gone pink and the pullover was starting to fade and I was frog marched down the road again into school.
Going to school in the Christian Brothers, which was 2 minutes away, I think I used to get up at about 10 to 9. And I got this habit from my older brothers, because their breakfast used to be the bottle of milk that was on the doorstep.
There was no Wellingtons actually there. We went to school nearly barefoot the most of the time, especially from Patrick's Day on. A lot of the poor children in the parish wouldn't have any boot going to school on them, like, you know. And the roads weren't tarred then. They were rough, they were all potholes and all that thing.
A lot of people went to morning mass and evening devotions, and I used to go to morning mass, but sometimes we wouldn't go to evening devotions. We'd maybe go to the crypt or go.
The Corpus Christi procession was held every year.
Now with the Child of Mary, and the procession was to march and that in June. We had a lovely procession starting the square there.
We must be in the school with our veils and all on us at 2 o'clock, and we'd be marched out on to the street, 4 in a line, all the school, and there's a man called Tom Kiley.
And we'd come over from town, march over from town, and we'd hear the priest shouting at the top of the road, "Oh, the Abbeyside people are holding us all up again."
We'd have to wait for him, he was an altar boy. And we'd have to wait for that altar boy until all the whole people came from Abbeyside, from wherever they came.
You'd have to kneel down, the procession would go all around like now.
And your cloak and your veil, you wore it, and all. I still have the medal.
Everyone detested Neil Essex Square, and you'd be looking for a bit of a newspaper or a bit of cardboard, and like that, to just to protect you.
And your knees, you'd have tights and stockings on you, and the tar would be stuck to them.
I'd go with the Dungarvan parish choir, and later years, and it was lovely. But then they had to stop having the procession because the pubs were open and there was fellas falling out of the pub, and which was sad, really.
My granny taught all the local kids, free of charge of course, there was no money involved then, taught them how to play music and set dancing. She was famous for this Cumra set.
Not so many women played music back then. I couldn't remember anyone that not even older women. The only woman that I would have known that played the accordion was my own mother.
You used to be dancing in the neighbours' houses, and you learn there like that. There was to be dancehall music, and in every house that time, and people rambling in there. The door was never closed, the rambling houses they were called.
It was always songs and music and singing and playing music and set dancing and playing for sets. And I can remember we had great nights in our house at home.
It was a kind of an open house, if you like. Big cement floor in the kitchen there, and that's where the dancing.
It wasn't so easy then because you didn't, the men would go out to the pub and play the music, but we wouldn't be left out to the pub.
My father would hear the commotion then. About 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd come down, he'd clear the house, saying, "Feck off home for yourselves there. Everyone here has to get up early for work."
We used to enter all the feshkiols, and there was feshkiols, and there was all sorts of things going on. As youngsters, we used to cycle in with our tin whistles and our accordions.
We stage out and pull out in a ring, and 3 or 4 of them, they're stuck near the Shanachie now there. We used to cycle out to that stage. There'd be somebody playing an accordion there.
What I do remember all right were the gala weeks that we used to have here years ago. It was a full week of entertainment.
And there was something on everywhere in the town. Down in the local park, we had a big bandstand, so there'd be bands playing down there.
It was just fabulous because there'd be bands up there playing, like local bands like the Royal Aces and the Tropics and all these other people.
There'd be a different band every night, it was great,
I'd say it'd be more like a lorry than a stage in those days now, but it'd be in the square, and everyone would be out in the square. Everyone would be just milling around,
And particularly when you were a teenager, were able to go out in the square and meet the girls that you fancied, and you're coming out for a bit of a dance or whatever.
And they used to be cycling around the town as well, around some of the streets. And they had these little go-karts that used to have races around as well.
And they'd be doing 50, 60 miles an hour going around the block that would come down Mary Street, you turn right down Main Street, go down then, and you'd go up then by St. Augustine Church and back up and across the top of the town and back down. And the lads would be doing that lap after lap after lap. And they'd be flying. There was a flag Kjol here back in 1957 or 58. And I think the pub stayed open for like a full weekend or whatever. Never closed.
But we lived here. This was our home.
We just lived upstairs,
We played with the customers.
This is our front room. This side here, and the kitchen was here on the first floor, and then and of course the bathrooms then were upstairs. You say, and sure, if you're above in bed, you'd hear them going in and out of the bathroom.
John used to ask him for a penny for sweets. He'd always ask him for money for sweets. Some fellas used to give to him. More fellas used to give him a clout.
Like I'm upstairs, right, with my mother, and I'd run downstairs to see what Daddy needed or wash a few glasses for him or whatever, Or maybe he'd give a hoot.
My mother used to say she'd leave me outside the door in the pram, and whoever was passing would take her along and bring her for a walk and bring her back.
He like very modern technology. In the bar, he had a pipe going from the bar up to the kitchen, and he'd blow into the pipe, ooh, you see? And that's all he had to do. We'd one or two of us run down to see what he wanted. Or else he might even shout into it, "I need you down here," And of course, maybe 3 or 4 of us have to go downstairs because a whole load of people would be after coming in, and we'd mullock in then to washing glasses, serving people and whatever,
So I had 3 children under 5, and I had the pub. and I had the children. And it was busy because we're very near a pier. And actually, I don't know, does this exist? I think there's one in Dublin. We had a fisherman's license, which means you could open for 22 hours in a day because we were very near a pier. And I can tell you, we opened for the 22 hours. We were often there all night, you know. And the fishermen would be going out at 6 or they'd be coming in at 6. And if they saw a light, you were finished because you'd have to let him in, you know.
And like my memory of living here was that we were always open. Good Friday, Holy Saturday, Holy Sunday, whatever day, Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, the whole lot. There was always somebody inside in the bar. And it didn't matter. I remember my grandmother died and the bar stayed open. There was no such thing as closing it because the lads had to get their pints.
We used to have many a song with seven of my brothers. There would only be 4 of us in the pub, like, over in Kylie's, over there, the village, and actually my brother, the late brother, he still owned it, like, his daughter had it over there, the other side.
Like when I think of it now, what people actually accepted, that was the heat inside in the bar. People came in and they'd rest their large bottle on it, on the top of the stove to warm it up a small little bit, or maybe a hot whiskey or whatever.
We'd have a rattle but we could sing songs all day and never sing the same song.
My name is William Hollander, as you may understand. I was born in the county of Waterford in Erin's lovely land. When I was young and in my prime, a beauty on me shone, and my parents doted upon me, I being their only son. My father bound me unto a trade in Waterford's fair town. He bound me unto a cooper there by the name of William Brown. I served my master faithfully for 7 long years or more, till I shipped on board the Ocean Queen belonging to Tramore. At a certain point in the time in the pub, someone said, Nick Tobin for a song. And the guy on my t-shirt, Nicholas Tobin, who was probably the most famous and the best Shannon singer of all time.
He was a lovely man, very quiet, very gentle, and he was in the pub. For as long as he had money, he was in the pub. But no matter how drunk or sober or anything, he was always a gentleman.
It was so packed that he had to go in behind the bar, and he walked down to the end of the bar, and he just, Maria, as they say, leaned nonchalantly on the wall at the end of the bar. And of course, now I know, with experience of unaccompanied singing, is that he was covering his ears so he could hear himself if he was in tune or not, because there was so much noise in the pub initially. But of course, after he started singing, he got order, because he just had this amazing command in his voice, like, and the whole place just went silent.
And there's a story that a good friend of mine related to me there recently, Michael Wright. And Michael said that he came in here one night for a pint, and he was only young at the time, but he stood with his hand against the chimney of the stove which is lighting, and he couldn't. he was so afraid of my father, because he was only young for 18 or 19 he was, and of course it was his first time coming in, that he couldn't roar or say anything, and he had to take his hand down, put it up his coat and run outside and say, "Oh, my hand is after burning."
There was a load of pubs in Dungarvan, and a lot of them sold groceries as well.
Every fella that drank in Dungarvan my age learned to drink at Joe Tobin's pub, because she used to keep small bottles of Guinness, and they all learned how to drink with the small Guinness.
It wasn't just a bar that were running. Like, there was a bar across the road, Nicky Casey, he had a shop in the front, he used to sell vegetables and cabbage seed and all that. And Mickey Landers then, he used to collect the paper for recycling. And there was another Tom Nugent, he used to rear pigs out in the back of the pub. And Jerry Kineen, Undertaker, taxi driver, shopkeeper, bus keeper, and publican. And my father then had the bar here, restaurant upstairs, and he used to do the mart, the cattle mart.
In a restaurant.
He had a restaurant over in the cattle mart, in the local cattle mart.
A spring deer ray to go for our shopping and to bring all the goodies home from town, from Dungarvan. And then when things got little better, we had to wait for a long time. And my father got a back-to-back trap.
There was no off licenses, so people used to get, if they had something on at home, they'd get something to take home, you know. But that died out then, you know, with the off license in the supermarkets.
The most important thing was Tommy Powers, which was where I used to go and get my father's tobacco. And it used to be a shop at the front, and go get ham and bits and pieces for the shopping. And at the back of that was a pub. Of course, I never saw the pub, but I used to go in there all the time for messages. Pop over across the road and get us that.
There was only a bus coming into Dungarvan, you know. A bus was coming once a week in Ely's.
And there was a lad used to drive the bus, Eddie Mooney. He used to come in every Friday. He'd drop all the people off, all the country people, like from Ring and Old Parish and everywhere. And he'd give them 3 or 4 hours going around the town to get their messages. And the whole hall down the outside of the bar there, the whole hall used to be full of messages. And he'd come back in then again around 10 to 2. The bus would leave at 2 o'clock. So he'd be in the front bar there and he'd smoke about 3, in the 10 minutes he'd be there, he'd smoke about 3 fags, 3 drops and 2 large bottles. And then he'd go around and drop them all off.
I was going to Barron's for snuff. My mother and aunt used to snuff. And it had to be white cap snuff, that was the name of the snuff. If you brought the wrong snuff, you'd have to almost go back again with it. And that was in Barron's in Dungarvan, out O'Connell Street. Elsie would remember that.
And Welch's.
Welch's, yeah.
The Welches of Dungarvan were very well known, and his family had the pub and the quay, which is now the Anchor, but we still call it Welch's the Quay sometimes when we're talking among the family.
Well, I remember Danny Manny was the saddler now, and his shop was fascinating. All the leather bits hanging up in it, and all the old bridles and harnesses. And he was very neat. He used to have little pieces of paper up with the charge, waiting for the farmers or whoever it was to come in and collect them. And his tools then, he had lovely old tools.
I remember one of the shops that was just off the square. It was Fennell's. They used to make knitted goods. You could order cardigans and jumpers, and my mother always ordered our woolen socks from Fennell's. And after St. Patrick's Day, we used to go into ankle socks, but from November to St. Patrick's Day, it was knee socks. And the man there, Mr. Fennell, he wore one of the high collars and a dark suit and white shirt. And it was always dim in there, and everything was kind of Dickensian. To my eyes, it was kind of Dickensian, and he had the names of all the colours. And I remember one day he said, "That's delphinium blue," and the name stuck in my mind. Delphinium, and of course that's from Greece, and the names of the colours, fuchsia and terracotta. Such names like that came into this dark little shop. Well, it wasn't a little shop, it was a big shop. And Mr. Fennell was so nice and so old worldly.
One in particular was, as we knew her, as Maggie Dalton. She's a little shop halfway up the street here. And
we used to go and get things called Peggy's legs. There were honeycombs or blackjacks. And
she had sweets and this, balloons, bangers and all Nicky small toys and stuff, so it was always up to Maggie Dalton's.
And Fleming's over here, they used to have the seed. You could smell all these big drums of seed. You'd go in, you'd scoop it out into your bag and put it up in the weighing scales. You could smell it when you'd be passing the door as well.
But the only other... Buckley's then up in Fair Lane. Oh, that's right, up in that end of the town. The bombs. Yeah. They all had our own little places to go,
There was a brilliant fish and chip shop called Sheen Ryan's down Main Street, and it had sawdust on the floor, and it was very basic, but it had the best fish and chips.
The grocery shops then was the London and Newcastle, and you got the stamps, and that was in Mary Street. I remember going in there and being told, go to such a fella, he'll give you the meat, he'll know what I want.
You'd hate as a child to be asked to go because they'd serve all the older people first, and they'd want back rashers or streaky rashers, and they'd want a load of other messages as well, where you might only be sent down for a pound of sausages and a half pound of rashers.
And you handed them the list, and they put them in the basket for you.
And our radio would be run by a battery that you'd have to get recharged over in Hurley's shop that is over there where Chris Kelly is now.
People used to bring in their wet and dry batteries, and that's the one day he wouldn't let you into the shop because the whole floor of the shop used to be covered in the batteries, and he'd recharge the batteries for the people. And then
Fumes
the fumes and stuff off. So that was the one day he wouldn't let you into the shop.
And there was Maloney's shop at the end of Friary Street, and that was probably the biggest grocery shop in town. And again, on the bottom of the left-hand side was where the bread was. Now they were bakers as well, and they were ship owners, and they imported coal, and they were, at one time, Maloney's were the biggest employers in the town.
Matty Duggan was telling me, and he young fella, he worked up there now where the Capital Cleaners are. There was a little bakery there, and out in the back, he said, the bakery is saying to keep a few pigs for the waste bread that wouldn't sell. They'd fatten the pig with it, and they get back some few shillings. And Matty was only a young fella. He was going with his father, and he only 12 years of age, and he'd stand up in a box to bring him up to the height of the table for working at the thing. And the sun would be shining if it's summer in the morning, he said, and them pigs would be snoring. He said, and I used to say, I'd love to be ye. And then had to go out there in that back about 10 years ago, and mother asked me to do something out in the back, and I went out, and here is that little pigsty. It's still there. It's still there in the back of the thing, and the old door to the oven is there.
If you wanted to go into the old post office of a day that the fair was on, they'd have, we say that's the door of the post office, they'd have a chain here and a chain over there, but you would still have to manoeuvre a cattle or a cow or a sheep or something to get into the post office, plus the decoration that used to be on the ground, and
Oh yes, I often walked to the fair in Dungarvan with cattle. They'd be, the fair of April was the fair for you to be selling heifers, and the fair, and then the fair of May, you'd have weanings there, as they call them.
And then if it was calves, it would be on the Saturday, there was a calf market, and you bring in the calves.
That's right, the calf market used to be held then of a separate day, the first Saturday of every month.
Stand above in the square and walk around, and everyone that would be buying would be inspecting the calves they'd want to buy and that. But you'd always get a half crown from whoever bought from Daddy. I used to get half crowns in them days now.
And a local man, Jamie, Tomas Kiley and Knockety Moore, used to go to the fair of Abbeyfield, and he'd be there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he'd buy, say, 20 Hereford bull calves, and he'd bring them back for the fair of Dungarvan on the Saturday, and he'd resell them to the farmers, Hereford bull calves.
And then the fair in October was a big one again, because all the buyers came down from the Midlands. They came as far from County Cavan, and when you had your animals sold inside in the fair, you drove them over to the train, and they were put on the train. They went up to Longford, up to Cavan. All the buyers came down from that side of the country.
The fair in Dungarvan was held on the third Wednesday of every month, and it was a magic place.
The square would be cordoned off. Any premises that could afford it, they would actually put a barrier outside their premises to stop the cattle from coming in.
Half shutters on the windows, so they came halfways up the windows.
Oh God, I do remember the fairs. The cattle came in maybe at 6 o'clock in the morning, walked in, farmers walked them into the square, and by God, was it a rough day.
The whole square would be transformed and full of animals and people, and it was just great just to be wandering around there, and there'd be sheep and goats and cows everywhere
And the sounds and the banter of the farmers, and of course I was, looking up at cows.
You could walk through the square and the tails could hit you in the face.
Yeah, we had cows all around the place, in right into the doors in the shop, and they'd be spreading the sawdust all over the place,
And you just had a couple of hundred cattle out in the square, and they were buying and selling, and that was it. And we walked up to school through all the cow muck and the whole way up, and came home at dinner time to the same thing.
And you'd have young fellas minding them, wouldn't you, with sticks, and they'd bowl.
We had an incident one time where a cow broke loose and came right into the shop.
Some of the sheep used to run into the businesses around different places, and they'd be in after them trying to get them out.
And I tell you, that was a cold sweat, because we had to turn them around and get them out without doing damage.
I remember a cousin of my mother's referring to, it was the eve of a fair, so that's how important the fairs were, and the eve of a fair, getting the animals ready to have them loaded up in the morning and have them into the fair in time to get a good spot.
You'd have to gather them up in the fields, and then you would have to walk them into the square in Dungarvan. And
My father would leave home that morning at about 4 o'clock with a horse and cart with creels in it, and he'd bring maybe 8 or 9 bonnets into the fair to sell them.
Oh, to take you 2 or 3 hours at least. You know, you'd be walking from early morning.
But they'd be out the All Road, and they'd be out Kilrush at every side, like, you know. You're probably talking about, I'd say you could be talking about 1,000 head of cattle at least.
You'd have carts with a calf or 2 in it, and they'd be in coarse bags with their heads out.
From early morning you'd hear, just up the road from our house on every side, you'd hear the cattle moving, coming in the Waterford Road, coming in from Clonay.
We always got the pigs outside us here about 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'd wake up to pig screeching outside.
And then I was down when the fair used to come in. I used to be minding the cattle there, the fair day.
You could be standing in the rain and you could be freezing cold. Now, and often you could get a few bob minding a couple of cows for a farmer. He'd be gone in for a bottle to, you know, Tommy Powers or into any of the pubs, Nicky Casey's in the square.
And the farmer, when he's going to pay you, Jackie O'Donnell, I hope you hear me. You'd have to put out your hand like that from the... My father told me he asked for £0.50. He'd put it into your hand. Yeah. Make sure you take it. He didn't want you to take it off of him.
Hey, Frankie Leahy, like an Abbey side, great man, God bless him, and he'd show you out the scuffle with the old horse. Do you know what I mean? And show you picking spuds and show you don't trade, like. If you ride a horse, like, show respect for him. But the fairs were massive then. Cows, they used to be rotten, but I mean, clean doctors, no poison, you know what I mean?
And I get a large bottle. Yeah. Off of the farmer with my couple of bob. And I go up home and I be staggering, going up after the bottle, going through the ball alley, going into Carlbrew. And I getting sick as a dog on the way up.
And what age would you be now, Richard?
I was only about 10 or 11 then.
The bar that John mentioned there just came into my mind now is Nicky Casey's. That was called the Booty Men's Bar. And for years I could never understand why it was called the Booty Men's Bar. Because just off in the pub there was a big wall. And on the fair days, they used to bring in the stallions. Right? And then the other farmers, then they'd bring in their mares to get serviced. And the reason they got the Booty Men's Bar was because the men would tell you, don't go up there, the booty men will get you. They didn't want you to see the
horse in action.
Yeah.
My first memory was catching the horses out in the field at 1 o'clock in the morning with my father. And I'll always remember this particular morning. I had a big white bib on me, and I was frightening the horse, one horse. A horse that would always come to put on the winkers on him. And my father said, "What is wrong? We'll go in and take off that white apron and we'll have some chance of putting the winkers on the horse," because there were 2 horses to go with the creels of pigs into Dungarvan Square.
And then the fair moved out of the square and they moved it up here. There was some kind of a committee formed, weren't they, Joe? Yeah. And they didn't like to see the horses shit, are we supposed to say that? In the square, and they were kicking up.
Well, going back in the earlier years, there was a great town for a fair. It was great, but then it became then so big that you had to take it off of the square on account of people with prams and things, like, you know what I mean? So it's better off down here, like, you know what I mean? It's safer here, like, you know. It's a great place for it, like, you know.
But they'd come the night before, you see, they'd come the night before, a lot of them, you know, and they'd sleep in the wagons and sleep in the carts. And
yeah, when I was small, actually, we'd have a few ponies in it, you know, you'd have ponies for lads, bring them in there, like, it was always great trade. It was a kind of a great tradition, it was there for years and years, but you know, the same as all the fairs.
And Joe will tell you, the pubs used to open at 4 o'clock in the morning for the fair.
Fair morning, 4 o'clock in the morning.
The money you were dealing outside the door. In and out, and the fellas would be getting drunker. It was easier to buy it.
There was a deal going on last night in the neighbourhood. Well, no one would go in between.
Nobody interferes.
Unless you were
unless you're going to talk with a bit of sense. Talk between 2 people and talk with a bit of sense. If one was given 1,000 and the other was taking 15 or even 2,000, talk with a bit of sense, divide the money. And then if that is done by either party and it's not happening, we'll divide it again.
Oh, and I hit the hand. Look, Joe, hold out the hand. Look. Divided, isn't that right, Joe? Yeah. You'd always divide, and plus you had to spit in the hand. That was part of.
And you've got to pay. And when I had the deal done, the rattle on them, see and pay up. And then that man, he can go across down the green there and buy something else if he wants to.
It's not how good you are about me.
Horses would make a fool of you.
I won't buy it.
Let your eyes be your guide, and the money the last thing you part with.
But good horse dealers, guys, they don't ever catch a person like, an innocent person like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They wouldn't just take and make a few pounds, they wouldn't catch them like,
Like if they go into the pub and they give you the stick and with people in the one
spot. You buy the cattle, you put them in above in the year, and you'd have a number, you mark with a red stick. You put a red mark on them. And you pay them so much to hold them until you take them in the evening. That's right.
You met one of the buyers and he'd ask you, would you drive that bunch as far as Ballylimon? And you drive them then to Ballylimon, which would be 7 or 8 miles out, and you'd know that you had been there before, where to put him. He'd tell you what shed or what field to put him in, and that would be, and you'd be paid for it.
You'd have a bad day at the fair, then you wouldn't sell. And I'll always remember my father, when he wouldn't sell the cattle out of the 2 creels of pigs, he'd have no steak coming home for us, or no sweets, or no apples, because he said there were no sweets in town today, or no apples, or no steak, because he hadn't the money.
And of course, by dinner time, there'd be a few of them after selling their cattle, and they'd be inside and downstairs, and they'd be singing away, and they'd be happy out, and they'd be after making a few bob, or not after making a few bob.
Then they would go in to have shake hands for a drink, and that, of course, that was the beginning of the end. They stood inside in the pub, and then until you could bring him home, I would a lot of the time come down here to Peg and try and get a sandwich and bring it up to Dad. You know, could I get him to leave the pub and come home? But I couldn't ever.
Then we go for a drink into Perry Casey. My father would always get boozed. And I'd have to drive the horse and trap, the back-to-back trap.
And there was a rule in my house when I was a child that I wasn't to come home without my father.
And then Bohado and Elsie have a son in the pub there now. We'd stop there, but there were no women. My mother and myself weren't allowed in. And those days, women weren't allowed in. And I'll always remember the horse leaping and jumping all over the place, and the back-to-back trap, the wheel being up on the side of the fence, because the mare was after having a foal, and she was mad to go home to feed the foal. The milk was dropping from the mare. And I run over to the door again ask my father would he come away, and he was getting boozed at this stage, and so was Dr. Mullaney and the postman, and every time I'd go over I'd get a bar of chocolate to keep you quiet.
And then when the fair was over that time, you'd see all the urban council fellas, they're coming along with their big brushes and cleaning up the streets.
And it was a great man called Jimmy Power from Lochmoor, right? He'd get a big hose.
Imagine the whole square would have been covered. There'd be several hundred cattle there.
And Jimmy would have the whole square shining.
And of course, where did it all go into the quay?
Then we get paved drovers to drive them cattle home, and they'd stay in the house with us. They'd sleep out in the stable loft. I'll always remember my mother, she'd have an apple tart baked, and they'd sit at the fire, the drovers, the husband and wife and daughter, and they'd always get 5 shillings, might be an awful lot of money, was a lot of money in those days. And my father used to say, they smoked the pipes at the fire, and my father used to say, whatever you'll do now when you're sleeping in the stable loft in the hay, don't light the pipe, because my hay will be burned and my straw will be burned, and I won't have anything for my cattle.
Nå fju dat kopla kofrin den orbui da Merisland dat chapel no dat volacht god jo ni
In the summer, I had put in my name for a job in the glass factory, and I went back to school, and then I got called for an interview. So a week later, I left school. 15 and a half years of age, you couldn't do that today. This was the old apple factory. This is where the glass factory started first. This had asbestos roof on it, so in the summertime it was roasting hot inside there, in the wintertime it was freezing cold.
I want to go to be a baker, as my father was a baker.
But then that was the age that most people would have started in the glass factory. It wasn't unusual, That would have been the time that they took on apprentices at that age,
15 shillings a week, and then after a year you got maybe 30 shillings, and that baker's wages then was only £6 for the week, for the 6 days.
Casey's and Maloney's and Williams's. There was 3 bakers in Dungarvan.
I was down at Maloney's bakehouse then. There were 14 bakers then in Maloney's. Now they're not one baker in Dungarvan.
When the factory started first, so the original guys would have had to come from Waterford to train in people, and then those guys, made a life here themselves and had their own families here. But then they became as much Dungarvan people as anyone else.
I've been here now, I would say, about 46 years in the square in Dungarvan. Previous to that, I was in London. But I started off in Waterford 51 years ago. On March 23rd, I was 16 on March the 20th, and started hairdressing. At that time, a fee had to be paid, 100 guineas. My parents had to beg, steal and borrow.
I worked in Powers Brewery, but I only worked summer season and in for Christmas to bring up the stock, and it was lovely. And I was bottling the porter.
I cried every Sunday night. I did, yeah. I missed the soccer in Kilmac, playing on the team. I missed the old dances, and I missed all my friends. Totally different. 18 years of age, ended up. I know I was lucky to be with my aunts, but you're on your own still,
Then at that time when you got married, you had to give up your job.
We had to wear big canvas aprons, and they'd be fixing the apron like they were called modelling or something. We used to be roaring laughing. When the ones that been on just a short term, we'd be laughing mad.
You got what they called a marriage gratuity, which was maybe £300, but you were finished as far as work with the council or that, unless you were lucky to find a job,
My sister Marion was given up here. My mum said, would you not come home and try it out? And I said, no. I said, the type of work that I've learned with Sassoons would not go down in Dungarvan. And how wrong I was.
We couldn't talk because the noise of the machinery. I had a friend, she's dead now. She used to shout down. She was on a conveyor belt putting up the empty bottles, and I was collecting them at the end, putting them on the siphon. And I'd be daydreaming. I'd be on a cruise. I want to go on a cruise, but I never got there. And I'd be cruising along, and I'd be lying out on the stick, and I wouldn't realise it, but my lips were moving. I was talking to myself.
It was all happening then. In actual fact, when I came back here to Ireland, I was one of the first to introduce blow drying in the south of Ireland.
And she'd shout down, Annette, yes, you're talking to yourself again. Oh, shut up, I used to say to her. I used to be really vexed when she'd catch me talking to myself. Where were you now, she'd say. I don't know, just floating around, I'd say.
I had more jobs than dinners. I was 3 times in the leather factory, and basically you wanted a letter from the Pope when I got in there first.
Mostly people back then, they worked in farms and stuff like that, until such time as 1935, when the leather factory opened. There was hardly no employment in the town back then.
My brothers worked there. Half the town worked in the leather factory.
It started here with Dickens leather, and then it went eventually to the Irish Leathers Group, and they made fantastic leather, which was sent all over the world.
It was a very important industry because it was the first real industry, I suppose, apart from Dungarvan Co-op. And the factory was established in the 1930s, and it became a major employer, so they expanded and took over a whole series of warehouses and buildings.
Here in particular, because this was the main artery down to it, you could smell at the back of the shop when the hides would go down. Yes. Because the hides, when they were cut off the animals in the slaughterhouses,
they were thrown in the corner until they had. So you had rotting flesh and the whole lot on the thing going down, like there was an awful stink of it.
And the biggest problem there was when they had tanks, when they washed all the skins, and the tanks, you had all this gooey stuff coming out. Well, they were supposed to leave that off with the tide going out, but in other cases it was never done. And I know I had a couple of handy little boats myself. The ropes were filthy, everything, steps were filthy with this.
Washed out into the tide. And if you were allergic to chrome, then you got what's known as chrome itch, and your whole face would be dotted with this thing. You go on your back and all the rest, and others they could wash their face and nothing would happen.
Oh, it was filthy. Maggots jumping around your hair and coming in the summertime, the smell of you know what I mean?
It was a dangerous place as well. 2 men lost their arms down there. And my father often told me there that the screams of those poor men when they got caught in the ripping machine, that it was horrendous. It stayed with them for years, like, you know.
And then you got a gold watch if you were 25 years here. And of course, like every other job, you had characters there. So Eddie knows this well. There was one man there, Johnny Maguire, a hell of a great man, but he had a great sense of humour. So his time came to get the gold watch, and he used to do an awful lot of cycling.
A lot of them came from the town, but there was quite a few of them came. I think my father would have been the furthest away. There was some of them from Unrying. They would have come in as well, you know.
Tom Booth was the works manager at the time, and Johnny went up to him. He said, Mr. Booth, he said, would be any hope, he said, instead of the gold watch, you'd give me a bicycle, because he used cycling an awful lot. And the answer he made him, well, now, Johnny, he said, if I give you a bicycle, I'll have to give Tommy Aiken a washing machine.
Jesus, it's a rough look now, taking out pelts and put your hand, like, I mean, your shoulder up to that, like, and you're breaking the ice in the morning on these paddles, and that thick, and your hands inside that all day.
Actually, no one ever died from the leather factory either.
No.
They might have been a bit pale looking.
Whatever kind of wind or rain blew, whether it was snowing or raining or wind or shuck no snachta no péra de bhí I gist bhecha ma had al sosar an rohar agus an tros fada sin éanamh stacha to Dungarvan agus bheach sé fluk bata. He'd come home absolutely soaked into the skin, and I remember we hardly saw that much of him. We'd be kind of gone to bed or going to bed when he'd arrive, and his clothes would have to be put to the fire to dry for the next morning.
When you think back, like, the first morning I went into Paddy Sullivan, Lord of mercy, they're all gone now, you know, and he said to me, now lads, he said, I'm going to tell you something. Half the factory has gone mad, and the other half is going mad. But he said, you're all right, if you talk to yourself, you're all right, but if you answer yourself back, you're finished.
Retired to the streams of Bonmahon or the vales of the Nire, to the slopes of the Comoras or the sweet Knockmeal Downs. Fare thee well, lovely Dacia of fame and renown. Oh, how well I remember and long still to stray from the streets of Dungarvan right out to Cloney, where the lights from old Helvig oft guided me right. Fare thee well, lovely Dacia, my joy and delight.
I often remember now all the old sailors there, Captain Higgins, and big, coats and big hats and big moustaches, and they all burnt with tobacco and stuff like that.
I remember they used to have all the coal used to be stacked along there, and timber used to be stacked along there, so it was a kind of, in the daytime it was a very active place.
There were pit props being sent to Wales, so when the steamer came in with coal, once it was empty, load up with pit props. And so on. Of course, we used to use these pit props for hideouts and things ourselves.
In the daytime, but not in the nighttime, because it was very badly lit. So it's just a place you wouldn't go in the nighttime.
Be afraid to go down there.
Be kind of afraid to go down there, but nothing ever happened down there. But
as we're standing here now, the old coal yard was here. coal was coming in like hundreds and thousands of tons of it, like, you know. But then the coal boats moved up the quay. We moved up, then they moved the crane. There was a big crane there.
So some of my friends used to work, they were dockers, used to work on the boats.
Used to be trying to get cigarettes.
And they used to get good money, like there was good pay for it. But you'd unload a boat like in a day or a day and a half. But they got good money, you know, so.
They were hungry days. You wouldn't make, like, it was just, when they came back from sea, like, my father, he'd work on the docks. You know what I mean? Like driving the winch and the boats, like, you know what I mean, that, like the coal boats. I remember bringing over the little billy gallon, my poor mother, the best, you know, you know what I mean, whatever they could rattle up as a sandwich, that's what they had, that's what they got. And you bring over the gallon of tea, like, and they meant that you only see their eyes, but they'd be black with the coal dust.
I've often seen 3 boats being unloaded there and 2 or 3 more waiting outside. I mean,
it was magic. You had all these beautiful sounds.
There was a lot of local men on the Lady Bell. The Lady Bell was known by everybody, and we'd all run as kids when we'd hear the Lady Bell at the Conacher. She'd blow twice to say she was coming in.
You had Patchin organ and you had Matty organ, right? And they used, Patchin used, I'll always remember, he was a lovely, lovely man. And we learned so much from these people. He used to get a plug of tobacco and he'd had a special knife. And then he'd be rubbing away and he'd be kind of humming, whistling away and he'd be rubbing it. And the smell to us, it was nectar, really. It was beautiful.
All that crack, I used to learn out sea shanties and you'd be hearing them over in the public and all the old stories. Do you know what I mean? And it was a pleasure, like, to stand among the men, like.
And he used to put it in his pipe and he had a kind of a silvery top on it to stop the draft or whatever. And we'd always be sitting down next to Patchin and we'd be watching all the old fishermen and they'd telling yarns.
And they'd be standing over at the pond on Abbey side and they'd be telling stories, but as a boy you wouldn't be allowed to stand where the adults was talking, like, but sometimes you might get in and there are no yarns.
It was an education as well, because you were meeting people from a different culture and different part of life that we knew nothing about. And they followed the Silver Darlings all around the coast of Ireland back to Scotland.
When I was speaking with my mum and dad before they passed away, they were telling me how they used to walk down the quay when the fishing boats were in, because the Scottish lads would come in here some of them would come in here for their few drinks, and they would be given lobster and prawns, the best of fish, and Mother would bring it up here and she'd cook lobster and she'd cook prawns in big saucepans on the old egg cooker, as I said, that was inside the kitchen.
Going back to the early 1800s, Dungarvan was synonymous with hake. And hake was so plentiful that one man could pull in 1,100 fish with a hand line in one night.
When the tide would be coming, we'd trawl the Western Bay, like way up there, and we'd get all flounder. Do you know what I mean? And that went on and on and on, and then we went mackerel fishing as well in the summertime, and it was hard going.
In 1831, the fishery was so good at the time. 3,000 people were involved in the fisheries.
And the fish was salted. There are records of salted fish in the 18th century in Lisbon and in France. You know, merchants coming across barrels and barrels of Dungarvan hake. That was the famous fish.
Hake was so plentiful that the farming community, they used it as fertiliser on the land.
In 1848, there was 3,000 people living in this parish, depending only on fishing, all along the coastline from Ballyharron up to Seaview, Grattan and Enna.
The earliest record of what was here was you had famine victims here during the famine. They put beds in here on both floors, here and upstairs.
This area here was one of the worst hit places in Ireland, right? Now, in this hand here is the actual workhouse. That was built to take 600 inmates.
The workhouse was overpowered, and they had to find other places to put them. And this was one of the places where they brought them. In
July 1851, there was 1,987 people in the main workhouse, and there was 1,100 in the auxiliary workhouses. These were stores around the town.
They had a very tough and harsh regime, but they were given basic food rations. And from our research, the numbers of deaths within the workhouse weren't high. There were deaths there, but I suppose people were just fed just enough to keep them going.
On the 26th of September 1846, the people of Clashmore were living on berries and grass and leaves.
Even to the present day, you'll hear about the great work that James Orcutt done during the famine here in Ring, like, you know.
You have all the heroes, and you have clergy on both sides, Church of Ireland and Catholic, who we know from the record were helping people.
He was always very upset the fact that there was plenty of fish in the sea, they couldn't be caught. You see, they had nothing left. I mean, you must remember that you were kind of famine before 47 as well. You had 37. There was a bad flu then. There was a lot of people from Ballinagall that died in that flu, and they were buried in a field over in Ballinagall. In my young days, there was a cross there, you know where they were buried. But of course, a farmer came along then and leveled the whole thing out. So there's no sign of that graveyard there anymore.
At various times, Dungarvan was particularly bad, and one of the accounts we came across said it rivals Skibbereen. And Skibbereen is a classic case of it was extreme, what was happening there during the famine period.
In 1846, he started up at the Rangogona Relief Committee, and he gathered £130, which was a lot of money in 1846, you see. But when he had the money gathered in, the problem was how would he distribute it, or what way would he help the fishermen of Ballinagall, because they weren't able to go out fishing.
Just outside where we are here now, 50 yards where we're sitting, they were exporting grain from this town. And yet the people, there were corpses everywhere.
He read on the Times, I suppose, the London Times or something, of a scheme that the Quakers had in the Cladda in County Galway. So he got the grain waved in, and he contacted Joseph Strangman in Waterford. Now he was the secretary of the Central Relief Committee for the Quakers in County Waterford. So they came here to Ring, and they had a meeting.
One of the grain merchants in Dungarvan was Andrew Carberry, but he was also on the relief committee, and he was helping the poor. But his attitude would probably have been, if I open my doors, my business will be ruined, I will have to let all the men go. They will have no income, they will then have to bring their family to the workhouse.
And they put a plan together to give loans to the fishermen. If there was 49 boats benefited from that scheme, from 10 shillings to £3. And my own great-grandfather actually he had 4 men on the crew of a boat named Helvig, and he got £2.7 and 6. And the way you paid back the loan was 6p every month. The Quakers never gave you anything. That was their system of working, which was a good way of working.
It was such an important help to the people of Ring that effectively the fishing industry moved from Dungarvan out to Ring, and really that became the centre, and it never recovered really in Dungarvan fully after that period.
If the village of Ballinagall at the time was wiped out, we'd say, only for he coming, there wouldn't be one of Irish in this parish today, because he saved that community.
You have people dying, and a woman going around the square with her son's body in the back of a horse and cart saying, will somebody give me money for a coffin? And you find there's a ship being launched. Because that shipbuilder and owner, Mr. Mahoney, employed a whole lot of people, and that kept them alive and, kept their families in the workhouse. So we kind of imagine, I suppose, everything came to a stand still, but life still continued on.
The political meetings, of course, from the very start, no doubt, in the late 1800s, people gathered here as well, because the square goes back 200 years. It's part of the developments of the 6th Duke of Devonshire, who revised and revitalised the whole centre of the town.
The initial impetus for the reconstruction of Dungarvan, which Grattan Square is part of and the Causeway is the other part of, that all came because the Duke of Devonshire was in competition with Lord Waterford to elect MPs.
They were beginning to lose power, and decided, well, I wonder if there's anything we can do to influence people in Dungarvan to vote for our candidate. the election.
By building more well-appointed houses, it meant that the Duke of Devonshire, in effect, was buying votes, because the people in those houses would then vote for the Duke of Devonshire's man.
So when they created the square, the section towards Mary Street, that was actually a part of the main street houses, so they effectively had to knock through and demolish a whole group of houses, so that you could then create Mary Street itself leading up to the church. So there's a sort of kink in the layout. It's not a perfect square.
We had some great celebrations here. In fact, the celebrations in the square, naturally being the focal point of the town, was where the celebrations and other gatherings would be.
There was a lady passed one time and we were all down Mary Street with little flags to wave when I didn't know where he was on his way to.
There was a big, huge public meeting there 5 weeks before Michael Collins was killed at Ballinabelow. And Michael was addressing the people of the Daisha for the very last time. And he was on the back of a lorry, and the town council, the clergy and the press were on board. But one of the old IRA jumped in, anti-treaty, jumped in and took off with the lorry with our town council, the press and the clergy on board.
And we actually have a photograph in the collection showing the immediate aftermath of that event, with an enormous crowd in the square all looking off towards Bridge Street.
And Michael's bodyguard stuck a gun in the window, and he told him to stop or he'd shoot him. He kept going over the bridge, capsized the lorry on the causeway, just up the street from where we are now. The entourage fell off the lorry anyhow, nobody was badly injured. Michael Collins returned to where Lawler's Hotel is now, and there's a beautiful balcony, an beautiful cast iron balcony with the Duke of Devonshire's motto, family motto, crest in it. And for the very last time, Michael Collins spoke to the people of the Daisha 5 weeks before he died.
There's a huge gap in Irish history. Even if you're a local historian, we're very dependent on the records that are left to us. And the records that are left to us generally tend to be from middle-class people and wealthy people, even photographs and drawings. And they don't tend to reflect the history of Ireland. They tend to reflect the history of this narrow segment of the population.
There are some wonderful later photographs in the late 19th century by Lawrence, and it shows sort of very lively scene and the women in the cloaks and shawls, you know. Of course, these are all in black and white, which makes the Samson Roach drawings very important because they're actually watercolours.
And he drew the inhabitants in situ. He sketched them as he went. So we basically have the people of Dungarvan from 1828 as they're going about their business in the square.
So we have colour. You can see the wonderful array of colours and clothing, and how many women are smoking pipes, which is very interesting in these drawings. And it's great we've been able to incorporate some of these images into the new plaques which have been inset around the square.
They're the actual Dungarvan people. I think 9 out of the 10 drawings are Dungarvan. We used one Waterford one of the carriage because we didn't have a carriage for Dungarvan. Now, this plaque is actually commemorating the story, and it is a legend of Mrs. Nagle, who reputedly toasted the health of Oliver Cromwell in 1648. And as a result of she toasting Cromwell's health, Cromwell did not kill everyone in the town. He only killed most people in the town. He didn't kill them all. Now, this is very much a legend. We don't know if it's entirely correct, but it's a very old legend. It certainly dates back to the 18th century.
I painted the square, plein air. I don't really use photographs. I always, I try to actually paint on the site and capture the energy of the whole thing in front of me. So when the project began on the square, I found it kind of fascinating because I knew it in one particular way, and then suddenly it was all being changed, where the barbed wire was going round and the boundary created between the workmen and the public. And just to see large machines working on the square and to see the layers being taken off, looking down into history, into Dungarvan in the past.
I was interested in the design of the shop fronts first of all, the graphics. I could see the old shop fronts were a thing of the past, so I said I'd record them. But some of them wouldn't stand in themselves into the shop front, but most of them would. And some of them, there was a few then refused totally, so that was a pity, you know. Years later then, when you look back at the photographs, you notice the stuff in the background. Now when you look back at the photograph, you can see all the old tools and the old stuff that he used to use, you know.
But it was so, the square is so different now. You know, there was things you did and things you didn't do, and things you got away with and things you didn't get away with, you know. But
You know, like what do you do inside your own hometown? You take care of yourself, you know, and you do your best.
It's just a lovely place, like, you know, you have the mountains in the background, the sea in front of you. If you like the water, I like the water. I like swimming, canoeing and that kind of thing, you know. So you have everything, like.
I suppose if like a lot of people my age, if we stopped and thought of it all, we could write a book.
Gales along the Curragh Mountains, beating sleet on creaking signs. Iron gutters turned to fountains, and the windscreen laced with lines. And the evening getting later, and the ache increased again, as the distance grows the greater from Dungarvan in the rain. There was no one now to wonder what eccentric sits in state, while the beech trees rock and thunder round his gate lodge and his gate. Gone the ornamental plaster, gone
the overgrown domain, as the car goes fast and faster from Dungarvan in the rain. Had I kissed and called you to me, had you yielded warm for cold, what a power had pounded through me as I stroked your streaming gold. You were right to keep us parted. Bound and parted we remain, aching, if unbroken hearted. Oh, Dungarvan in the rain.
My heart's with you, my native place, though far from you I stray. In dreams I'm with you every night, in thoughts, yes, every day. How often have my eyes grown dim, and salt tears trickle down, when I think of you so far away, my own Dungarvan town. To see old Grattan Square once more, sure my heart with joy would leap. And then to stroll down by the quay and view the mighty deep. Yes, and through each street and lane to ramble up and down, and gaze on well-remembered scenes in sweet Dungarvan town.